I'll give my job to your mom if you can translate what he said. As Carmen served coffee in the Thompson Mansion's exquisite meeting room, Ricardo Montero laughed loudly and pointed at her. Chinese businessman Chini had been talking in Mandarin for 5 minutes straight, pointing with increasing frustration, and no one there understood a word. The luxury room, which had a view of the Beverly Hills Gardens from all sides, saw another business morning that was quickly going apart. William Thompson, the real estate billionaire, sweated coldly as he saw his greatest international deal slip through his fingers. The interpreter had cancelled at the last minute, which made things difficult for everyone in front of the Chinese millionaire. Carmen Silva, 48, a maid who had worked at that home for 7 years, looked down and kept serving coffee like she always did, without being seen. But outside the room, Latika, her daughter, leaned against the wall in the corridor and heard every word of the public humiliation. The 22-year-old had come home early from college and was once again seeing her mother being made fun of. Ricardo, who was the vice president of Thompson Enterprises, liked times like this. He was good at turning stress into funny situations at the cost of people he thought were less than him. "Go on, Carmen," he said with the harsh smile she knew so well. "I bet you understood everything Mr. Chang stated. You must have learned how to wash dishes in Chinese since you're such a hard worker." People laughed all around the room. William even laughed awkwardly, trying to ease the strain that was costing millions. But Cheney thought it was quite humorous. His dark eyes suggested that he was getting more and more angry at this lack of professionalism and clear contempt. Carmen stayed calm like she normally does. She had learned from 30 years of working in family homes that reacting only made things worse. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ricardo," she said softly. "I don't get any of this." "Of course you don't," Ricardo said. He hit the table with his fist and laughed. "But how about we make an interesting bet, William? I'll give your maid my job right now if she can translate what our Chinese acquaintance said. What do you think?" The room erupted in laughing. The idea was so ridiculous that even the security guards couldn't help but chuckle. Carmen Silva, a black woman without a college degree, was running against a Harvard-educated CEO for the job of vice president. The whole thought was funny to those guys in Kendra outside clenched her fists. But something in her eyes was not ordinary anger. It was the dangerous calm of someone who keeps powerful secrets. She took a deep breath, adjusted her university backpack, and took a step toward the door. What Ricardo Montero didn't know was that this young maid's daughter had spent the last 4 years studying international relations with a specialization in the Asian market. And what none of them could have imagined was that she had been speaking Mandarin for 7 years, ever since she secretly decided that one day she would transform her mother's life. While everyone laughed at the joke about Carmen translating Chinese, Leisha smiled slightly. They had no idea what was about to happen. If you're enjoying this story of justice and reversal, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. The humiliation didn't stop there. Ricardo was having too much fun to let this golden opportunity pass. "You know what, William?" he continued, rising from his Italian leather chair. "Let's make this even more interesting. If your little maid can translate a single sentence of what our Chinese friend said, I'll not only give her my job, but I'll also pay for her daughter's college education." The laughter intensified. The idea of Carmen Silva, a black woman of humble origins, holding an executive position in a multi-million-dollar company was so absurd that even Chini, despite not, she understood Portuguese perfectly, so she picked up on the mocking tone and frowned even more. William Thompson, who was desperate to save the deal, motioned for Carmen to come closer. "Come here, Carmen. Let's end this joke." His voice had that familiar condescension of someone who treats employees like entertainment for guests. Carmen walked to the center of the room with the empty tray, feeling the weight of all those eyes on her. 7 years working in that house, 7 years of being invisible, and now she was becoming a show. "Mister," she said, "William, I really don't understand Chinese. attempting to keep her cool. Of course you don't. Ricardo clapped his hands like he was cheering a funny show. But what if you try anyway? Go ahead and say something in Chinese. I bet Mr. Chun will enjoy what you think. Letitia saw every second of that humiliation from the hallway. Her hands shook, but not because she was scared. It was because she was angry and had been for a while. For a long time. She remembered exactly the day 3 years ago when she resolved to learn Mandarin. It was the day she heard Ricardo tell William that these people never try to get better at life. At that time, Letitia had recently gotten a partial scholarship for international relations and was working overnight shifts at a bakery to fund the remainder of her tuition. She made a choice that would change everything when she found out that Thompson's company was going to do business in Asia. She would learn Mandarin well and one day show that skill has no hue or last name. It took 3 years of getting up at 4 in the morning to study before work. 3 years of viewing free video classes on YouTube, installing apps, and practicing pronunciation by yourself in front of a mirror. For 3 years, she dreamed of the day when she could give her mother the life she deserved, far away from the mansion where she was treated like furniture. "Carmen, what are you waiting for?" Ricardo insisted, evidently annoyed by her delay. "Or are you going to accept that you're just like everyone else, a maid who isn't qualified and will never leave her hometown?" The words pierced through the air like a knife. Chini, who knew more Portuguese than he put on, was quite angry. In Chinese society, one of the worst things you could do was to show disrespect for someone in public, especially an older person. Carmen looked down, but not because she was ashamed. She had been using the same approach for years to stay alive in dangerous places, making herself small so that the predators would lose interest. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ricardo. You're correct. Of course I am correct." Ricardo was overjoyed now, as if he were the focus of attention. "That's what makes us different from you. We get ready, we learn. We receive our qualifications. You just sit about and wait for chances to come your way." Kendra made fists. Every statement hurt her personally, not only her mother, but also everyone who stayed up all night studying and got up before dawn to make impossible goals come true. Ricardo didn't know that he was talking to one of those people. William tried to step in since he saw that things were getting too awkward, even for him. "I think that's enough, Ricardo. Let's get down to business." "Business?" Ricardo laughed a lot. "What business, William?" "Our translator has left us. It's evident that our client is upset. And you want to do business?" Your maid was the only person in this room that even tried to talk to him. And see what occurred. Channy has had enough of waiting. He got up from his chair and talked Mandarin for about 2 minutes, his voice full of anger and despair. He pointed at Ricardo and then at Carmen, making it apparent how angry he was about what was going on. Ricardo yelled, "There you go!" as if he had just made his argument. "It's clear that he's angry with us for not being professional. Good job, William. You just lost the largest deal of your life because you trusted people who didn't know what they were doing." But Kendra in the hallway had heard all Chini said. The merchant was not only upset because there was no interpreter. He was really astonished by Ricardo's rudeness. He compared him to small men who boost their egos by treading on others and said he would never do business with people who treat their workers like toys. Chini also said that he grew up impoverished in Shanghai and that his mother worked as a maid to pay for his schooling. He saw in Carmen the same calm dignity that his mother had when things were hard. Finally, he said something that made Litik's heart race, that he would stop doing business with that company if no one there showed even the smallest amount of respect and professionalism in the following 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was everything Kendra had. She took a deep breath, fixed her university backpack, and walked with purpose toward the door. 7 years of shame, 3 years of hidden planning, and now 5 minutes to transform her mother's life forever. What Ricardo Monto didn't know, he had not only underestimated Carmen, but also a whole family who transformed problems into steps on a ladder that would lead them much higher than those men in suits could ever conceive. Every insult had been fuel. Every laugh had been a reason to keep going. And now it was time to get paid. Letitia took a deep breath and adjusted her college backpack. 5 minutes. Cheney had only offered that corporation that much before definitely terminating the contract worth millions of dollars. 5 minutes that would decide not only Thompson's future businesses, but also if years of secret planning will eventually pay off. For the past 3 years, she had been learning Mandarin and getting to know Chinese business culture, negotiation rules, and the small things that may make or break a sale. She got up every morning at 4 a.m., should study before going to work in the bakery. Every weekend, she went to the university library and read publications about the Asian market. She saved every cent to buy books on commerce around the world. It wasn't just the idea of a better life that drove her. It was also the terrible remembrance of all the times her mother had been humiliated in that house. For example, when Isabella, William's teenage daughter, threw orange juice on the clean floor and said, "Oops, your mother will have to clean it again." Or when Ricardo said in front of Carmen, "At least she knows her place. She doesn't dream of impossible things." Each mean thing made the plan stronger. Things Letitia was carefully putting together. She knew that one day she would be able to show that intelligence and skill didn't have a color, a social status, or a last name. And that day came sooner than she thought it would. She could hear Ricardo make the humiliation worse from the doorway. "William, I think we should hire more maids like Carmen. At least they realize they shouldn't have big aspirations for themselves. They don't believe they can do things they weren't born to do." Do. Cheney spoke Mandarin again, and his voice was full of anger. "This guy is a shame for any business that is serious. How can I trust anyone with my money if they treat their workers like toys?" He said it in Mandarin, waving his hands in the air. Letitia realized she needed to enter in a smart way. She couldn't just barge into the room like a student who was in a hurry. She needed to be trusted right away. At that point, she saw something that altered everything. Cheney's document folder was open on the side table by the door, showing contracts in both traditional and simplified Mandarin. She walked up quietly and took pictures of 2 pages with her phone. She came up with a brilliant plan in only a few seconds. She tapped softly on the door to the conference room. "Excuse me," she began as she walked in with a professional air. "I'm Letitia Silva, and I work for an international relations consulting firm at UCLA. I'm here to help you with the problem you're having with communication." Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Ricardo frowned, not sure what to do. William blinked a few times as he tried to understand what was going on. Carmen's eyes got bigger as she realized it was her own daughter, but she didn't know what was going on. "Sorry, but who called you?" Ricardo said, his voice full of contempt, and, more crucially, who replied, "We need consulting from a young black woman." Kendra finished with a calm smile. "It's interesting that this is your first worry, Mr. Ricardo. But let me tell you why I'm here." She spoke straight to Cheney and said perfect Mandarin. "Mr. Chun, I'm sorry for the disrespectful environment you're in. I'm here to offer my professional translation services so we can fix the situation properly." Cheney stood up right away, his eyes lighting up with relief and surprise. "Finally, someone who speaks my language correctly," he said, in Mandarin. "Where are you from? Your pronunciation is excellent." "I'm from Los Angeles, Mr. Chun, but I've studied Mandarin a lot over the past few years." Kendra spoke fluent Mandarin and said that she was an expert in Sino-American business negotiations. Ricardo was speechless. William tried to figure out how a young black woman had suddenly appeared, speaking fluent Chinese, and Carmen watched her daughter with a mix of pride and worry, afraid that Kendra might lose everything by putting herself in danger like this. "Wait a minute," Ricardo said, standing up and pointing at Kendra. "Ahon, aren't you the maid's daughter? What the hell is going on here?" Understood the question in English, looked from Kendra to Carmen, then back to Kendra. "Is this your mother?" he asked in Mandarin. "Yes, Mr. Chen, and that's exactly why I'm here. I heard the words you said earlier about respect, dignity, and professionalism. I came to offer the bridge of communication that this company clearly needs." Cheney smiled for the first time since he had entered that mansion. "Interesting. Very interesting. And tell me, young lady, did you hear everything I said earlier?" "Every word, Mr. Chun, and I can assure you that you'll be satisfied with the solution I propose." That's when Ricardo exploded. "This is ridiculous. You can't just show up here and interrupt our business. You're a maid's daughter, not an international consultant." Letitia turned to him with that dangerous serenity she had been perfecting for years. "Mr. Ricardo, you made a bet a few minutes ago. You said you would give your job to whoever could translate what Mr. Chung said. I'm here to accept that bet, but you're not the maid. The bet was with your mother." "The bet," Leisha said, taking her cell phone out of her pocket and showing a recording, "was exactly this. If anyone can translate what our Chinese friend said, I'll give up my job." "Your own words, Mr. Ricardo, and I have witnesses." Cheney watched everything with growing interest. Not only did this young woman speak his language perfectly, but she also displayed an impressive strategic intelligence. William Thompson, realizing that the situation had he tried to step in when things got completely out of hand. "Kendra, right? Maybe we can talk about this in private." "There's nothing to talk about in private, Mr. Thompson," Kendra said firmly. "A bet was made publicly. Cheney was publicly disrespected, and my mother was publicly humiliated. The resolution will also be public." Ricardo was red with anger. "This is absurd. You are a student. You can't just—" "I can't what, Mr. Ricardo? I can't be competent. I can't speak languages. I can't have ambitions beyond those you deem appropriate for my color and social class." The room was completely silent. Cheney watched every word, every gesture, seeing exactly the kind of intelligence and dignity he respected in the business world. That's when something unexpected happened. From a folder that Kendra had discreetly observed, she took out a sheet of paper and showed it to Cheney. "Mr. Chun, I believe there is an error in the investment calculations on page 23 of your contract. The figures in yuan do not exactly match the conversion." Cheney took the document, looked it over quickly, and his eyes widened. "You're right. How did you see that?" "Because I studied not only your language, Mr. Chun, but also your market. I know that details like this may seem small, but for Chinese business people, accuracy is fundamental." At that moment, everyone in the room realized that they were no longer dealing with a simple student taking advantage of an opportunity. They were dealing with someone who had meticulously prepared for this moment. Someone who had turned years of humiliation into fuel for impressive competence. Ricardo felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. William Thompson realized that everything was changing rapidly, and Carmen, for the first time in 7 years in that house, felt a pride that warmed her chest like fire. But what none of them knew yet was that Lita had saved the best revelation for last. What she was about to show would not only save the contract, but completely rewrite the rules of that game. Every second of every early morning of study, every silent humiliation, and every bit of preparation had been a step toward this moment when underestimating would become the greatest weapon against those who think that power comes from birth, not merit. Kendra took a deep breath and looked directly at Cheney. "Mr. Chun, you said exactly this 15 minutes ago." And then she began to translate everything the businessman had said into perfect Mandarin. "You said you were very disappointed with the lack of professionalism at this company and that you expected to find serious partners, but instead found an environment where employees are publicly humiliated for the entertainment of incompetent executives, not of professionalism at this company, that you expected to find serious partners, but instead found an environment where employees are publicly humiliated for the entertainment of incompetent executives." Ricardo felt the blood freeze in his veins. Cheney nodded vigorously, confirming every word. Leticia continued relentlessly. "You mentioned that you grew up poor in Shanghai, that your mother worked as a maid to pay for your education, and that you would never do business with people who treat workers as objects, of William Thompson was pale. Each new piece of information was like a bomb going off in his plans for international growth. But the most important part, Lytia said, was when you said you would stop doing business with this company unless someone showed real competence in the next 5 minutes. That 5 minutes ended exactly 2 minutes ago. The room was deathly silent. Ricardo tried to intervene, but it was too late. That's impossible. She can't just do what? Chang Wei stood up and spoke in slow but firm English. She translated everything perfectly. Every word. How do you explain that, Mr. Ricardo? That's when Kendra took her cell phone out of her pocket. Mr. Chun, may I show you something that I believe will be of interest to you? She showed him the screen. It was a simultaneous translation app that she had developed as her final university project, specifically for Sino-American negotiations. Chinwee's eyes widened. You created this? Yes, sir. It's my final project for my degree in international. The app not only recognizes words, but also cultural differences and specific negotiation rules between Chinese and American businesses. Ricardo was falling apart. William, you can't be serious about this. What are you thinking, Ricardo? William turned to him with a rage he had never shown before. You should think about the fact that a 22-year-old woman saved a contract that you almost completely destroyed. You should also think about the fact that she showed more competence in 10 minutes than you have in 8 years. Chini took Kendra's phone and looked at the app. How many people have access to this? For now, only me, Mr. Chin. But I can license it to companies that truly value intercultural communication. And how much do you want for an exclusive license? Letitia smiled. It depends on the package, Mr. Chun. Exclusive license for your business group. $500,000. Personal consulting for expansion into the American market. Another $300,000 per year. And if you include cultural protocol management for all your investments in the Americas. She paused phone and examined the app. How many people have access to this? For now, only me, Mr. Chin. But I can license it to companies that truly value intercultural communication. And how much do you want for an exclusive license? Letitia smiled. It depends on the package, Mr. Chun. Exclusive license for your business group. $500,000. Personal consulting for expansion into the American market. Another $300,000 per year. And if you include cultural protocol management for all your investments in the Americas. She paused deliberately. $1 million annually. The entire room was speechless. Chunwei smiled for the first time since entering that mansion. It's a deal. Ricardo slumped into his chair as if he had been punched. $1 million? She's asking for $1 million. And I'm paying, Chini replied dryly. Because real competence is worth every penny. He turned to William. Mr. Thompson, I have a proposal. Keep the original contract with one condition. This young lady will be my official representative in all. William looked at Kendra, then at Ricardo, who was sweating like he was in a sauna. What about the job that was promised? Oh, about that. Kendra opened the folder she had brought with her. I have the full recording of the bet Mr. Ricardo made. She pressed play on her cell phone. Ricardo's voice echoed through the room. If anyone can translate what our Chinese friend said, I'll give up my position. I bet she understands everything, Mr. Chang said. Your own words, Mr. Ricardo, Letitia said calmly. Everyone in this room saw it. Ricardo blew up. This is ridiculous. You can't just record a private conversation. Private? Letitia raised an eyebrow. A business meeting at a company with multiple witnesses. Mr. Ricardo, maybe you should review your basic legal concepts. Chini watched everything with growing admiration. Not only did this young woman speak his language and understand his culture, but she also showed impressive strategic intelligence. William Chini said firmly, I only do business with people of integrity. He pointed to Ricardo and said, This man lied about having an interpreter, disrespected employees in my presence, and now tries to break a promise made in public. How can I trust my company to an organization that allows this? William Thompson was at a crossroads. Losing Cheney meant losing $200 million in future contracts. Keeping Ricardo meant losing credibility with the most important partner in the company's history. William said, "Ricardo, slowly. You're fired." The silence that followed was deafening. Ricardo staggered. "William, you can't. 8 years working together. I built half of this company's contracts. You almost destroyed the biggest contract in our history." William replied coldly. "And worse, you did it by humiliating an employee in front of an international client." Carmen, who had watched everything in silence, finally spoke up. "Mr. William, I can't accept Mr. Ricardo's position. I'm not qualified for it." Kendra turned to her mother with a proud smile. "Mom, who said the position would be yours?" She looked at William. "The bet was that if someone translated, that person would get the position. I translated. The position is mine." Cheney clapped slowly. "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." Ricardo was red with anger and despair. "You can't do that. I have rights. I have a contract," had William corrected. "As for your rights, consult your lawyer. I'm sure he'll explain how public verbal bets can have legal consequences." Kendra walked over to Ricardo and held out her hand. "Mr. Ricardo, please give me your office keys and access card." Ricardo looked at the outstretched hand as if it were a poisonous snake. The humiliation was complete. The maid's daughter had ruined his career, his reputation, and his arrogance in one masterful move. "This isn't over," he muttered, handing over the keys with shaking hands. "For you, it's over," Litisher said calmly. "For me, it's just beginning." Chang Wei walked up to her and said, "I have a question. How did you know I would be here today?" Letitia smiled. "I didn't know, Mr. Chun, but I've been preparing for any opportunity that might arise for 3 years. I studied not only Mandarin, but Japanese, Korean, and Arabic as well, because opportunities favor prepared minds. And the app? When was it developed? I finished it last week. I hadn't even presented it to the university yet." Cheney laughed in admiration. "You turned years of he-turned humiliation into fuel for excellence. That is true intelligence." Ricardo left the room like a ghost, carrying only his shattered dignity and an uncertain future. Outside, he heard the negotiations continue without him. Heard Chang Wei close million-dollar deals with a company where he had worked for 8 years, but now mediated by the young woman he had completely underestimated. Alone in the hallway, Ricardo finally understood the lesson that had cost him his career. Never underestimate someone who is hungrier for success than you are sure of your superiority. But was this really Lycia's last card? Or were there even more surprises in store for those who thought they knew the full extent of her intelligence? 6 months later, Lita was in her office on the 20th floor, now as Vice President of International Relations at Thomson Enterprises. Her first decision as an executive had been to hire Carmen as quality supervisor, with a salary 3 times higher than that of an employee. Chang Wei became not only a business partner, but also a Kendra's app had already been licensed to 15 multinational companies, bringing in $3 million a year. She used some of the money to start a free language school in poor areas. In her corporate talks, she said, "Competence has no color, age, or surname. It only has results." On the other hand, Ricardo was dealing with his new reality. He was fired without a letter of recommendation and had trouble finding work. His arrogance had become an urban legend among Los Angeles executives. A market. Business people shared the story as an example of how prejudice can destroy careers. One Thursday afternoon, he showed up at Thomson Enterprises waiting in the reception area. Letitia came down personally to greet him. "I came to ask for an opportunity," he said, eyes downcast. "Anything. I've learned my lesson." Kendra looked at him for a moment. "Ricardo, I've learned that second chances are earned, not asked for. When you prove that you've really changed, maybe the market will give you—" He left with his head down, carrying the bitterness of someone who finally understood that humiliating others is the quickest way to humiliate yourself. Carmen, now respected and valued, smiled as she watched her daughter transform not only their own lives, but also positively influenced dozens of young people who attended the language school. "Mom," Letitia said one Sunday night, "thank you for teaching me that dignity is not negotiable even when the world tries to convince us otherwise, tries to make us think differently." The best revenge was not to destroy Ricardo, but to build something greater than he could ever imagine. Letitia showed that when competence meets opportunity, neither prejudice nor arrogance can stop success. In the end, Ricardo tried to humiliate a family, but only humiliated himself. Letitia and Carmen learned that true victory is not about putting down those who have hurt us, but about rising so high that they become irrelevant. If this story touched, you should subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Do you think that merit always wins over prejudice? Your experiences can help others never lose up on their aspirations.